I mean, we are looking at this whole series called Encounters with Jesus. And so we're in Luke chapter 5. You want to turn there? Man, I had in my head that I was going to teach a couple of sections here, but we're only going to get to one. It may be short, could be long. I don't know. But we're just going to see how it goes and see what takes place. You know, what I love about these stories that we're doing is they're so fresh. And they're easy to understand. They're and again, not to harken back to my trip in India, but I never know how much I'm going to speak. It's just, hey, we're speaking here today, and you're speaking there today, and you just get tossed around, and you don't know until you know the environment. And so I think I've shared with you the two prayers that I've been asking lately on a regular basis is, what do I need to know about this situation, and then what do you want me to do? So we walk into this church, the one that I was telling you about, and they've already been singing, and it is packed, and there are teenagers here and men here, and there's children here, women here, and then they're standing in the back of the deal, and then the doors are open, and there's a whole nother courtyard, and people are there. And so when we pull up and they're let out of the car, they're just singing, just wafting through the air, and they usher you in, and there, you got to sit on the front row, the whole, kind of thing, celebrity status, and it's just awkward. Because they're all looking at you because you're the white guy, and so we're sitting up there, and I'm like, man, Lord, what? Because I had an idea of some things I would teach, but in the culture there's like men are somewhat like harsh and unloving a lot, and so there's just a family dynamic that could use some help. Women typically walk a couple of feet behind the husband. I can't get Tammy to do that. I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to work on that. But no, I mean it's just a different environment, and so in fact I was talking to some men while I was there, and they said I never saw my dad hug my mama, and they never hugged us, right? So it's just that kind of an environment, and so I wanted to speak on obedience, not from the perspective that we obey because it's a rule, but we obey because it's helpful for us. And so as I'm sitting there, I'm looking at this, I'm deciding on the text is going to be Ephesians 4, which is a powerful deal. It's practical about obedience and why it's beneficial for us to do that. And so then I thought about our sermon last week. And I love telling Jesus stories in an environment like that. And it's fun because you're telling something, I'm going to give my own sarcastic humor. And so half the crowd laughs, and then when he speaks, then the rest of the crowd. So it's kind of like this delayed, deal going on. But the kids are so engaged. It's 3.5 hours we were there, and these kids are in the front, and their worship. You look at their faces, and they're not just, they're not packing it in. They're engaged, and they've got their Bibles out. They've got notebooks. They're marking things up. It was like they didn't have crackers, that somebody's feeding them. They didn't have colors. Here, do this. They didn't give them mints. That's what we always did when our kids were, there was none of that. They were just engaged. And man, when you tell these stories about Jesus, they're like on the edge of their seat, just wanting to hear. So I'm telling about Peter going fishing and God calling the fish into the whole thing, and they're just like, it's just amazing to see what's going on, with how they connect with Jesus. And I guess I'm the same way though. I mean, I was kind of putting notes down today, man. I'm in my office. I'm crying because I'm seeing just, man, how I get into a movie. Do y'all do that when you watch a movie? Do you become the characters in the movie? Or I'm still, I guess, 8 years old, but I'm that way. And so when I get into the stories here, I feel like I've just kind of fallen in. I'm in the story. I do the same thing when I read books. I find myself, I'm in those moments. And this is what's happening here. And so, man, it's just fresh. So we to get back to this, we just left off with Jesus having taught in his hometown, and then he went and visited cities. We know that he healed Peter's mother-in-law, and he did some demoniac things, and there were several things that he had done. And then Peter and them are just part-time. They're not like full-time disciples at this point. They have a job. They're fishermen, Peter and Andrew, James and John. And so this isn't where they're all in yet. This was that call we looked at last week. And so We looked at that story. Now, this is their first time of kind of traveling with Jesus. And if we were to see it from a chronological perspective, Luke doesn't speak of it, but the others say that he began to preach. He said, "Follow me, and let's go and preach the good news of the kingdom." And so he's doing that. And so he's gone to several towns back in Capernaum, and so we kind of pick up our story in that sense. So, and again, we're looking at encounters with Jesus, like not the masses. I want us to see and kind of fall in love with the intimacy of Jesus with each and every one of us. And so, I think it's valuable to know that. One of the things that I think we have to know is that everybody matters. Every single person on the planet matters, and they did to him. And I think it's important that we see that. In fact, in your studies in Revelation, in chapter 2, right? Remember where it says that, and he gave us our own name, right? Each of us is close enough to him that we get a nickname. And so it's amazing that that's going on. And so I just think it's important that we see it and we know it like that. So Simon Peter has been what we call humbly humiliated, right? Because he was like, we don't need to go fishing. We already did it all night. And so he's had that moment where he was humbly humiliated, and his first thoughts weren't, "Hey man, look at the fish. We've got an enterprise. If we can get Jesus on our team, we're going to be in the money." That wasn't it. That's how a lot of us would do, But that's not what he was thinking at all. He was like, "Woe is me, man. This is," and so they left everything to follow Jesus. This is the disconnect that I think sometimes we have. Are we there yet? I mean, are we all in with Jesus, right? Not just, he's my Sunday pal, or he's my little genie in a bottle. I know we don't think that, but there are people who do. But I think the question that we want to ask ourselves is, have we left everything to follow him yet, or we still kind of have a foot like in this world? And I think it's important that we make that decision. I'm all in, and so that's where they were, and so he takes them with him to preach the good news of the kingdom, and that's where it is. And so the first story that we pick ourselves up in, there has been opposition and persecution. He's had the encounters with the Pharisees there, and they saw that. We're looking again at these specific encounters, but he's had more demonic run-ins. Those things were going on, and they saw it, and so they're aware of what's going on in Jesus' world, that there was opposition everywhere. And again, back to India, there's opposition everywhere you turn in India. We jumped on a train from Nagpur, and it's a 7-hour train ride down to Warangal. And so we got on the train, and I'm with one of my partners. They all kind of divide us up, so I had mine, and so we're in one cabin. It's like what you'd expect them to. These weren't the trains where everybody hangs on. I've been on those. I don't know if you've seen the pictures of those, where they're like sitting on top and they're hanging off of it, and it's crazy. This one felt more like what you'd see, kind of little hallway, and then you got your little berth or cabin, and there's 2 beds, and that kind of thing. So Prenjit, our leader, he went to the back, and so we were just sitting there. We were carrying on. He came in, and he was checking on us, make sure everything was right, and he'd go back. And so he was in a berth with a Hindu astrologist. And so his first question to him was, are your American friends Christians? Why are they here, right? And so you think it's just that way. And so, he said, settling down. He knows you guys we're just touring, and yes, they're Christians, but we're not, Anyway, but it's that kind of a thing that you see going on there. And you realize it's everywhere, even demonic thing. We were doing this was in the seminary there, theological seminary it's a campus, and it's a great school, and we graduated a lot of people that day. But we were doing a foot washing, which takes on a whole nother level there for a caste system perspective. So the students are going to sit. So they've got chairs, and then there's buckets and water. And so each of us, I washed the feet of probably 7 or 8 students. And when my time was up, I'd sit down, right? And so you're doing that. And it's very meaningful for them because feet are like the, I know we all think, feet are the worst things possible, but from them, it's a caste system thing. The Brahmins, who are the priests and everything, they're like the head. Um, the warriors and the rulers are like the arms. The thighs are the laborers, and everybody else are just the feet. They're just the worst of the worst. And so there's this outcast system going on. So when you're washing feet, it's a whole other level than it is here, right? And so anyway, we finished up. I sat down and I'm just kind of praying and watching, absorbing the whole thing because it's just this full blown sensory overload. The music, the language, the smell, everything. And something hits my leg, and I look down, and there's this girl slithering, you know, on the ground like a snake and jerking around. So I thought, well, she's having a seizure. And then when she scooted over, one of the pastors jumped up and laid hands on her, and they were doing some other things. I realized it was demoniac, right, going on. So I'm not getting into that. It's one of those things that happens. And so when everything was over, I went and found her, met her little husband, and he spoke English, she didn't. And she asked me if it had happened before, and he was kind of regular, yes. And they had lost 2 children, just this, there's just oppression around them. So I had the privilege of praying over them and everything, just calming our precious family, right? And you think, man, this is real, Inside you said, it happens every time we go somewhere, like in India. It's just, the opposition is right there. It's great here, just doesn't manifest itself like that, right? My point, I don't know what I was telling, other than that I'm stuck right here as I'm looking at this. I'm thinking, this is Jesus traveling, and he's doing this, and Peter and James and John and Andrew, they're seeing all these things going on. And then they come to this story in chapter 5, verse 12. And it says, while Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was covered with leprosy. Now, it's big in India, but I don't want to talk about that. But it is, that's where Mother Teresa, that's where she went, right? So it's a real deal. But this is a true story. I mean, this is really happening. They're what's called the untouchables. So in one of these cities, when he meets this leper, listen, they're banished to the outskirts. I don't know if you know how that works, but they are there's the feet people, right? In the caste system, and then lepers, and that's a whole nother issue. They're fully marginalized, and they're totally deformed, right? This says he is. It says standing in the came along who was covered with leprosy. That means it's he's not just got a few white spots, which we think about with leprosy. That means some of his fingers are missing, some of his toes are missing. He could have an eye gone, and there's just a socket there. His ears are gone. This is what's going on. This is what's happening. He is full of leprosy, is what it says. And so what happens is it's a nerve issue. The tissues are dying. The nerves are dying. So you're putting your hand in a fire, and you don't even know it. And so all your extremities are not being cared for. You stub your toe, you know it, right? And you take care of it. They didn't know that it hurt, and so there's all of those things that are going on in that environment, and so that's what's taking place here. Now, they don't really have, in bigger towns they have a colony, and so they live in a colony. So when they got leprosy, they took them away from mom and dad or whoever there was, and they put them in a colony, and there they are, right? And so they kind of live, and nobody touches them. This is what they're untouchables. That's what they're called there in Jesus' day. And so that's going on. Now, in the smaller areas, potentially, and this is a smaller area, there's a room normally in a synagogue. It's called the Mosque, and it's simply for a leper or whatever. You have to get there late. You have to leave early. Can't be seen, and they never clean it. So it's just this filth of a room. But it makes them feel good. The Jews feel good about themselves, like, God, we care for the poor. That's kind of how it is, right? So this is the marginalized thing going on. The family abandons you. You're just lonely. You have to wear a sign around your neck that says unclean, right? This is what's going on, So, man, I think when I just look at that, I'm like, man, how do we bring it into our own world? And I guess, have you ever felt like you're that untouchable, like you don't fit, like you don't belong, right? I mean, I know there were times in my junior high days I didn't feel like I fit. I don't know if you were that way or not. We just don't belong. But listen, there's a whole world out there that's like that, that feel that way. I run into them, and I meet them, and I know you do too. So they got this sign around their neck, and I'm thinking, man, talk about a scarlet A, right? That you've got, I mean, it's just this sign. Now, obviously, for some, it was obvious that they were unclean because, again, their extremities were gone. But I'm thinking, man, what if I had to wear a sign that said, I had bankruptcy, or I'm a pervert, or I'm a, you know what I'm saying? How crazy would that be? And this is the environment that they find themselves in 24/7. They're known for this thing, and they're untouchables. He has to cry out when he goes to try and get food or anything else, and he's in close proximity, or she, to people. He has to cry out, unclean. He has to announce that to everybody as he comes into that place. And so this is the setting of what we find ourselves. And it says, while Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was covered with leprosy. When he saw Jesus, he fell with his face to the ground and begged him. So here's this man. You've got to imagine what's going on in his mind. He's heard the stories of Jesus. He knew about the demons, right? He knew about, I'm sure he knew about Peter's mother-in-law. I think it was in the same town, Capernaum. We guess at some of this, but it sounds like it based on my studies of all the other passages that go together. And so he knows that Jesus can heal. He knows that Jesus can clean. And so he's motivated that this is my one shot. He knows you're not supposed to go up to people. You're supposed to stay away from people. But not this day, not this guy, because of Jesus. This is what's powerful about Jesus. He's not interested in all of pointing out all the mess in your life. He did the same thing with the woman at the well, right? He sat there knowing the same thing. When we look at the story of the woman caught in adultery, he didn't shy away from that. He looked directly at her. And he says, anyone condemn you? No, sir. Then neither do I, right? He is not who everybody else is. All the Pharisees and Sadducees and rulers, they just get rid of it, put them in colonies. We don't want to deal with the trash. Jesus didn't like that. And the leper was banking on the fact that he was hoping that he wasn't. But even if he was going to go there. Now, when it says that he begged, the word there in the language is amazing, because it really means, it is this, we talk about Peter was humbly humiliated. This man lives in this humble, humiliated state. And so he wouldn't look at Jesus. He crawled to him in that sense. You've seen people like that. There are beggars that are like, they make money. And then you've seen the ones that, and that's not them, but they really sure could use a handout, right? And listen, if you've got guys like Jesus, you know the difference. I've had people say for me, I just need a little gas money to get down the road. Great, I'll go fill you up. No, I just need the money. No, I'll fill the car up. And you get to put $3 in. They didn't need the gas. They just needed that, right? There's a bunch of those. But then there are the others. This was the other. And so he's embarrassed, and he's just humiliated, and he's not even looking at Jesus. He's crawling, and he's just got his hand out. This is it. This is the posture. It's just, sir, if you're willing, would you make me whole? Right? What a desperation, right? I mean, this is powerful when we look at this to see what's going on. And so then it says this, Lord, if you're willing, you can make me clean. I love that phrase. He risked everything just to see Jesus. Falls down, does the begging, and he's just there waiting. Luke doesn't say this, but Mark does. It's one of my favorite passages. Because when the beggar says, if you're willing, make me whole, Jesus, moved with compassion, touches him, picks him up like a man, right? Like, hey, that's not who you are. Hugs him. Looks him in the eye. Nobody looked him in the eye looks him in the eye and goes, I am willing. Be clean. How powerful of a movement is that? If you're willing, make me clean. He knew Jesus could heal. That wasn't the issue. He just didn't know if he was willing, right? And that's the issue. That's the issue there. He's asking the question, do I matter? And I'm hoping so. That I matter to the King. And this is what he's doing. So it's this desperate plea. So what I find interesting here is the beggar broke protocol to go, no, I'm going to go talk to him. I know I'm not supposed to. I'm going to go talk to him. Jesus matched the breaking of protocol. Because if you touched the leper, there was a lot of rules you had to go through. And Jesus was like, I don't. And so he broke protocol too. I love that fact. So he picks him up and hugs him and he loves on him. I think sometimes we don't see God quite like that. I mean, he says, come to me if you're weary and heavy laden, right? I think maybe I'm speaking about me. It's easy just to come to God when you need him. And everything else, hey, I got it. I'll call you if I need you, kind of thing. Because a lot of us are like, I'm kind of like an alpha guy. I got it. I don't need anybody. I can survive. But man, how powerful is it to know that the King wants me to come to him like a little child. Now, I know we'd like to talk about he's our buddy and he's all of those things, and all those things are true. I'm not diminishing those. But there's something about just wanting to crawl up on the lap of the King and let him grab you and hold you and love you. And I think we don't spend enough time doing that in where we are here. And that's what was going there. And it's powerful to see what took place. Then he says this. So there's this moment when he's healed. Now, when he's healed, this is crazy because I'm assuming when it says healed, there's no other way to look at it. That if he had lost fingers, he's got fingers. If he had bleached skin, he's whole. He's whole. He's healed. And so this is what's going on. And so Jesus says to the man, Jesus reached out his hand, touched the man. It's better to move with compassion and hug the man. I'm willing to be, I am willing, he said. And immediately the leprosy left him. The word leprosy left him is an all-encompassing word, which means totally gone, totally repaired, right? So that's what's going on here. And he says this, don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest, which was, you had to do that. There were certain lepers that got healed. How they did, we don't know, but whatever it was, maybe it was a mild case and they got over it, however that worked. But they would have to go to the priest and say, hey, listen, I was a leper and now I feel like I'm clean. They would test him out and then he would go through a ritual, sleeping outside for so long, make sure it wasn't, quarantine. And then they could go. And so he says, and Jesus said, don't tell anyone, go show yourself to the priest and offer sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleaning as is testimony to them. Yet the news about him spread all the more. I think he probably obeyed the first part, like, okay, I'll go tell the priest. But I think he went to see Mama. I just got to believe he went to see Mama. Hey, Mama, look at me, I'm home, right? And so it just word got out. Besides the fact, if that's the guy you knew on a regular basis walking around like that, now he's not walking around like that. That's a story. You can't hide that stuff, and that's what's going on here. And so, I see this, and it's just amazing. Jesus was not unconcerned about the masses, but he wasn't focusing on the masses. Jesus wanted people to know that he is their shepherd, right? That he is theirs, right? This is what's important. And I think, listen, I run into people all day long that don't believe that. They believe that, well, God loves them, but you don't love me, right? Or I'm unlovable. Maybe you felt that way before. So he came desperate, reverent, humble, and full of faith. I think that's how we got to do that. I don't know what kind of, I don't have leprosy, but I have deficiencies, right? I'm a spiritual leper at times. If you could see the spiritual extremities, some of them look pretty janky. I mean, physically I look okay. Maybe, but inwardly there's a lot of mess in my life, right? Like I need to be made whole. And I think sometimes we don't go to Christ enough to go, hey, look, there's this issue in my life. I'd like it gone. I don't think we're desperate enough. I think that's the issue. We like being sort of good because there's not a lot of effort in being sort of good. I just have to be better than you, right? And that's not hard. I'm just kidding. I mean, it's just that issue there. But this is a personalized thing that we should come to Him just like He did. Not that we're unworthy, not that He hasn't forgiven us, but that our sin should weigh heavier on us than it does. We have to be that people that know that if God don't help, help ain't coming. And that's kind of the message that we find here in this text. And it's just powerful. So let me finish up with just reading the text. It says, then Jesus told him, don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifices of Moses commanded for your cleaning as commanded. Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sickness. But Jesus often withdrew to a lonely place and prayed. And it's powerful truth that we find there. I love these stories. And next week we're going to look at the paralytic and his friends who helped him out. And I know we know these stories, but man, they're rich. So, man, let's just sing our way out of here.